Before I tell you what happened that night, I need you to do just one thing. Hit like if you believe love can survive the impossible. And don't forget to subscribe, because once you hear this, you won't want to miss what's coming next. Never imagined the beginning of my life as a wife would take place under a chandelier. Not in a church, not in a home filled with love. But here, beneath cold crystal light, inside a private underground gambling club in Manhattan. I had heard of places like this. I just never thought I'd stand in one. The air smelled of whiskey and cigar smoke, thick enough to coat my throat. Men lounged in leather chairs with their jackets open, drinks in hand, their laughter low and poisonous. They barely noticed me, except when they did. And when they did, it wasn't with kindness. I knew what I looked like to them. Collateral. The cost of someone else's mistakes. "Stand up straight, Lena," my father hissed under his breath beside me. His voice shook. A man crumbling inside his own skin. I wanted to run. I wanted to disappear. But I stayed. I stayed because that's what daughters do when the people they love are drowning. And my father was already neck deep. Across the room, he waited. Aiden Cross, the man they called ruthless, sharp as a blade, cold as the steel towers his company owned across the country. I had seen his face on the news once. Stories whispered about him taking down entire corporations, wiping out legacies with a single signature. But none of that. Compared to seeing him here, sitting like a statue carved from winter itself. Black suit, black eyes, no heart. He didn't even look at me. Not once. But I noticed him. Every inch of him. Especially the silver ring on his finger. My breath hitched. I knew that ring. It was almost identical to the one my mother used to wear. A simple silver band, worn and smooth, engraved with tiny initials. She used to tell me bedtime stories while I played with it on her hand, spinning it round and round until I fell asleep in her lap. "Never lose your dignity, Lena," she had whispered to me once, sitting by the fire. "Even if you have nothing left, hold on to that." But tonight, it felt like I was about to lose everything. The lawyer leaned forward, sliding the contract across the table toward me. Marriage contract 1 year, in exchange for clearing every debt my father owed. My throat closed. I felt my father's hand tighten around my wrist, as if he could will me to sign by sheer force. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Then Aiden spoke. His voice cut through, the air like a blade. 1 year. You're mine. That was it. No emotion, no kindness. Just a claim, like he was picking out a piece of property. My hand trembled as I reached for the pen. My heart screamed for me to stop, but my mind reminded me what was at stake. My mother's medical bills, our home, my father's life. I pressed the tip of the pen to the paper, signed my name, and felt a part of me die in that moment. I stood up so fast my chair scraped across the floor. But Aiden was already on his feet, nodding once to the men around him without so much as a glance in my direction. "Let's go," he ordered flatly. I turned toward my father, silently begging him to say something. Anything. But he couldn't look at me. He just collapsed into his chair, head in his hands. I followed Aiden down the hallway like a shadow. My heels echoed off the marble floor as I walked further away from the life I had known. The night outside hit me like a slap to the face. Cold, wet, unforgiving. Rain poured from the sky, soaking me in seconds. I wrapped my arms around myself, shivering in my thin dress as the driver opened the door to a sleek black car. I didn't move. I couldn't. Aiden turned toward me, rain dripping from his hair, sliding down the sharp cut of his jaw. His voice was ice. "Get in." And I did. Because what choice did I have? I slid into the cold leather seat. He climbed in after me, not sparing me a single glance. His gaze stayed fixed on the rain-soaked window as the car pulled away from the curb. I pressed my forehead against the glass, closing my eyes against the tears threatening to spill. Somewhere in the back of my mind, I heard my mother's voice again. "Never lose your dignity, Lena." But I had already lost it, along with my freedom, along with the girl I used to be. Tonight, I became someone else his, and I had no idea just how much worse it was going to get. The leather seat beneath me was freezing, but the air between us was colder. We drove in silence. The city lights blurred behind rain-soaked windows, as if Manhattan itself was trying to disappear. My fingers curled into fists in my lap, trying to hold back the shaking. My dress clung to my damp skin, heavy and cold from the rain. I could smell the leather, sharp and clean, mixed with the faintest hint of his cologne, something dark and woodsy, like cedar and smoke. He hadn't said a word since we left. I dared to glance sideways. Aiden Cross sat like stone beside me, his jaw locked tight, staring straight ahead as if the road outside was the only thing that existed. His hands rested on his thighs, fingers spread wide, as if even touching the seat beside him might burn him. He hadn't looked at me once. I swallowed hard, clutching my handbag to my chest, like it could somehow shield me from the reality sinking. And I wanted to scream. I wanted to pound on the glass and demand someone, anyone, pull me out of this nightmare. But I didn't. I sat there, silent, the way I had learned to be. Good daughters don't cause scenes. Good daughters don't embarrass their fathers. Except, I wasn't even sure I could call him that anymore. I turned my face toward the window again, watching raindrops race each other down the glass. The rhythm of it pulled me back to the kitchen. At home, the soft hum of my mother singing while stirring a pot on the stove. She used to hum that same tune every night, the one her mother had sung to her. "Hush, little darling, the night's just begun." I could almost hear it now, like a ghost brushing past me. A lump formed in my throat. "I'm doing this for you, Mama." I shifted in my seat, trying to fight the chill that had nothing to do with the weather. My mind kept circling back to the silver ring on Aiden's finger, the way it had shimmered under the chandelier. It looked so much like my mother's. I knew I shouldn't ask. I knew I should keep my mouth shut. But the words slipped out before I could stop them. "Where did you get that ring?" His head didn't move, but I saw the muscle in his jaw twitch. Silence. I waited, holding my breath, but he didn't answer, didn't even flinch. As if I hadn't spoken at all. Tears burned the back of my eyes, but I swallowed them down. Of course, he wouldn't answer. I bit down on my lower lip, digging my nails into my palm until the sting grounded me. I could survive this. 1 year. Just 1 year. Then I could go back to my life, whatever was left of it. The car slowed as we turned onto a private drive lined with towering trees, their branches bending under the weight of the rain. Up ahead, lights flickered behind glass windows taller than any house I'd ever seen. His home wasn't just big, it was massive, cold, uninviting. The car came to a stop in front of the steps. The driver got out first, holding an umbrella over Aiden as he exited without looking back. I sat frozen. My legs didn't want to move. I stared at the door, my heart pounding so hard I could barely breathe. Then, something flickered on the seat, beside me, a soft glow from his phone, left face up by accident. A message lit up the screen. Just a name. Dr. Hathaway, Charleston Medical Center. I frowned. That was my mother's doctor. The one who had said her treatment was too expensive, that my father could no longer afford the hospital bills. My hand shook as I leaned in, reading the message. Payment received. Entire balance cleared. I blinked. No, that couldn't be right. My father, he hadn't paid anything. I glanced up, panic rising in my chest, Had Aiden? Before I could process what I was seeing, the door swung open. Aiden stood there, rain dripping from his hair, his eyes colder than I'd ever seen them. "Get out," he ordered flatly. I fumbled for the door handle and stepped out into the downpour, the wind whipping my hair into my face. The driver shut the door behind me without a word and disappeared inside. Aiden didn't move to shield me from the rain. He didn't offer me his hand. He just stood there, waiting. I followed him up the steps, water soaking through my shoes, my skin numb from the cold. The front door opened to a space so grand it felt like stepping into another world. Marble floors, high ceilings, a fireplace so large I could have stepped inside it. But it felt empty. Dead. Like no one really lived here. Aiden walked ahead without a word, leaving me dripping on the floor. I stood there, hugging myself, not knowing where to go, what to say. Finally, he turned at the top of the stairs, looking down at me with something unreadable in his eyes. 1 year, he repeated softly. His voice wasn't loud, but it landed like a stone in my chest. Then he walked away, and I realized with terrifying clarity that I had just stepped into a gilded cage, and he had no intention of opening the door. 3 days. 3 long, unbearable days passed in that house without a single word spoken between us. I tried to fill the silence with anything, walking the endless halls, touching the polished banisters, tracing the frames of paintings I didn't understand. But nothing filled the air that stretched between me and Aiden Cross like an invisible wall. I didn't see him at breakfast, or lunch, or dinner. The staff, what little there was, moved around me without making eye contact. Their faces, unreadable. I wondered if they even knew why I was there. I wondered if they pitied me. Or worse, if they didn't even care. By the 3rd night, I couldn't stand it anymore. I stood in the kitchen, clutching a chipped coffee mug with shaking fingers, staring out at the empty garden beyond the glass doors. I missed the smell of Mama's tea, the sound of her humming in the kitchen back home. I missed the way her voice softened when she spoke my name. I missed who I used to be before I signed my name away. I pulled out my phone, my fingers hovering over the screen. I shouldn't call her. I knew I shouldn't drag her into this, but I needed to hear her voice, just once. It took 3 rings before she answered. Her voice was tired, soft, but still hers. "Lena?" I bit down on my lips so hard I tasted blood. "Mama," I whispered. "Oh, baby." "How are you?" she asked, her voice shaking a little. "Your father told me you—" She didn't finish, because we both knew what he'd done. Tears filled my eyes. I pressed my palm to the cold glass, closing my eyes against the ache in my chest. "Mama, did you know?" I whispered. "Did you know what he promised me for?" There was silence on the other end, a pause so heavy I could feel it settle in my bones. Finally, she spoke. "I knew," she said softly. "I begged him not to. But he said there was no other way." My heart twisted. "You should have told me," I choked out. "I couldn't," she whispered. "Because if I had, you would have run. And I couldn't bear to lose you, even if this was the price." I slid down the glass, curling my knees to my chest, tears streaming down my face. "Mama, he's not even here," I croaked. "He hasn't spoken to me in 3 days. He doesn't even look at me." My mother was silent for a moment before she spoke again. "Lena, there's something you need to know," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Aiden, he wasn't a stranger to your father. Years ago they were partners in business." I frowned, my heart racing. "What?" "Your father. He betrayed him, Lena," she whispered. "They built something together, and your father, he ruined it." He left Aiden with nothing. I pressed my hand to my mouth, shaking. He married me to get back at him, I whispered, the realization slamming into me like a wave. I don't know, she said softly. Maybe. But there's more. I held my breath. We knew Aiden when he was just a boy, Lena. He used to come to our house. You were too young to remember. I froze, my mind spinning. Mama, what are you saying? She swallowed hard on the other end. Nothing happened. Nothing inappropriate, she whispered, as if she knew exactly what fear was clawing its way up my throat. But I think he cared for me. In a way a lonely boy might care, for someone who showed him kindness. I closed my eyes, pressing my fist to my chest, trying to steady the storm inside me. Mama, does he know? I don't know, she whispered. But when I saw that ring on your finger in the photo your father showed me, it was the same as the one I gave him all those years ago. The same one I once wore, before I married your father. My breath caught. He kept it all this time. She exhaled shakily. I don't know what's in his heart, Lena. But I do know. People don't hold on to things for years without a reason. I hung up the call before I could fall apart completely. I sat there on the cold floor, staring at the empty room around me. The man I had married wasn't a stranger. He was a ghost from a past I never knew I had, and I had no idea what that meant for either of us. I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake in the vast, empty bed, staring at the ceiling as shadows from the rain-streaked windows danced above me. The silence had become unbearable. The walls felt like they were pressing in tighter with every breath I took. He had known me once, a lifetime ago, a boy with nothing, holding on to the kindness of a woman who would become my mother. And now, he had come back to take something else, or maybe to ruin what little was left. I didn't know which was worse. The next morning passed like all the others, without a word, without a glance. But something in me had shifted, something sharp and burning. I couldn't sit in this silence 1 second longer. So when I heard his footsteps that night, slow, heavy, echoing through the hallway, I stood up. My bare feet hit the cold floor as I reached for the door and flung it open before I could stop myself. He stood there, halfway down the hall, a glass of dark liquor in his hand. He stopped when he saw me, his eyes narrowing slightly. I gripped the doorframe to keep from shaking. Why? My voice cracked. He didn't answer. I swallowed hard, stepping out into the hallway. Why marry me if you don't even want me? His jaw clenched so hard I could hear his teeth grind together. I took another step closer, hating the tears that burned my throat. What is this? A punishment? A trophy? My voice broke. Are you waiting for me to beg, Aiden? Is that what you want? I barely registered him moving. One moment I was standing there, the next. My back was against the wall, his hands pinning my wrists above my head. I gasped, my heart slamming into my ribs. His breath was hot against my cheek, his voice low, almost shaking. You think I don't want you? He growled. I froze. He wasn't cold now. He was burning. Before I could answer, his mouth crashed onto mine. Rough, unforgiving, stealing the breath right out of me. I struggled at first, but his grip only tightened. His body pressed harder, pinning me in place as his lips claimed mine, over and over until I couldn't think anymore. I felt him tear the thin strap of my nightgown with one sharp tug, the fabric falling uselessly to the floor. I gasped, but his mouth moved down my neck, his teeth scraping over my skin, making me shudder. I tried to push him away, but he caught my wrists again, lifting me off the ground like I weighed nothing. He carried me back into the bedroom, kicking the door shut behind us. He tossed me onto the bed like a man who had run out of patience. I scrambled to sit up, but he was already there, pulling me beneath him, forcing my knees apart with his hips. Aiden. I choked out, but he silenced me with another crushing kiss. I felt the heat of him, the strength, the weight of what was coming. And I knew, deep down, there was no stopping this. Not tonight. His hand slid between us, and then he was inside me. I cried out, biting down on my lip to keep from screaming. He didn't stop. He drove into me again and again, his grip bruising, his body relentless. The air filled with the sound of skin against skin, our ragged breaths crashing into the silence. I tried to fight it, the way my body betrayed me, arching toward him even as my heart screamed no. But he didn't slow, didn't soften. I lost count of how many times he took me, how many times he growled my name like it was the only thing he had left to hold on to. When he finally buried himself deep, one last time, his whole body tensed. His breath hitched as he groaned low in my ear. I felt him spill inside me, hot, filling me completely. He didn't pull away. He collapsed on top of me, his chest heaving, sweat slick on his skin. He stayed there, unmoving, his face pressed into the crook of my neck. And for the first time, I felt him shake. Just a little. His hand found mine, still pinned above my head, and he threaded our fingers together without a word. I stared up at the ceiling, my breath catching in my throat, my body aching in ways I hadn't known were possible. He shifted slightly, his lips brushing my ear. "You're mine," he whispered, broken and raw. "All of you." I squeezed my eyes shut, biting down on the sob that threatened to break free. Because in that moment, I knew it was true. The morning after should have felt different. I told myself I should have felt stronger, clearer, something. But all I felt was hollow. I lay perfectly still in the bed, my body sore and heavy beneath the tangled sheets. His scent was everywhere, on my skin, in my hair, in the pillow pressed beneath my cheek. I couldn't tell where he ended and I began. I blinked at the ceiling, willing my heart to slow, but it refused. Every beat was a reminder of what he'd done, what I'd let him do. I shifted beneath the covers, biting my lip at the ache between my thighs. I could still feel him there, like he'd left something more than just the bruises on my skin. I turned, my head slowly toward the window. The sky was gray, heavy with rain. Again. I could hear him moving across the room before I saw him. The sound of a belt sliding through the loops of his trousers. The soft exhale of someone exhausted, but not at peace. I watched him from the corner of my eye. He stood there, bare-chested, staring out into the muted light filtering through the glass. His back was tense, like he was carrying something on those broad shoulders that I couldn't see. Something heavier than me. I swallowed hard, pulling the sheet tighter around my chest, as if it could protect me from whatever this was now, from whatever I was now. He didn't turn around. Did he regret it? Did he even care? I pushed myself up slowly, wincing as my muscles protested. Every movement reminded me of last night, the way he had taken me, again and again, until there was nothing left but raw breathing and trembling limbs tangled in sweat-soaked sheets. I licked my dry lips, the words burning the back of my throat. "What now?" I whispered, not trusting my voice to hold steady. His shoulders flinched almost imperceptibly. I watched him carefully, waiting for him to turn around, waiting for him to face me like a man who knew what he'd done. But he stayed where he was. Silent. Still. Then finally, so softly I almost didn't hear him, he spoke. "Did I hurt you?" The air rushed from my lungs because it wasn't the question I expected. It wasn't cold. It wasn't ownership. It wasn't control. It was regret. He Still didn't turn, but his voice cracked, barely holding together. "Lena, did I?" I swallowed hard, my throat tightening. I didn't know what to say. Yes. And no. I felt everything last night. Pain, heat, fear, need. I didn't know where one ended and the other began. But the ache in his voice, it broke something in me. I slid my feet to the floor, clutching the sheet around me like a shield. I stood, shaky, unsure if my legs would hold. But I walked anyway, closing the space between us until I stood just behind him. I reached out before I could stop myself, my fingers hovering near his back, inches away from touching him. He tensed, but didn't move. I pressed my hand lightly against his skin, feeling his muscles jump beneath my touch. "I don't know what this is," I whispered, "but I can't keep pretending like I don't feel anything." His breath hitched. "I can't keep living like I'm already broken," I added, my voice shaking. He turned then, so fast I nearly stumbled back. His eyes met mine, wide, dark, full of something I couldn't read. He reached out, catching my wrist, pulling me to him so quickly the sheet slipped from my grasp, pooling at my feet. I stood there, bare in front of him again, trembling. But this time, he didn't rush, he didn't push. He cupped my face with both hands, lowering his forehead to mine, breathing me in like he needed the air to survive. "I don't deserve you," he rasped, his voice breaking against my skin. "But I want you. God help me, I want you." I pressed my hands against his chest, feeling the rapid beat of his heart beneath my palms. I closed my eyes, breathing him in just once. And somehow, I knew. This wasn't over. This was only the beginning. I woke up to the sound of rain again, not the kind that thundered against the roof in anger, but the kind that whispered. Soft, relentless, like it knew exactly how to fill the silence left behind. The clock on the nightstand read 7:16 a.m. I hadn't slept well. My body ached in places I couldn't name. The space beside me on the bed was cold and empty, as if he'd never been there at all. But I knew better. I could still feel him on my skin. I could still feel the ghost of his breath against my ear, the weight of his body pressing me into the mattress, the way he'd held me afterward like he wasn't sure whether to let go or never let go again. I sat up slowly, hugging the sheet to my chest. My throat felt raw, like I'd swallowed every word I hadn't dared to speak last night. My gaze drifted to the window. Gray skies again. Always gray. I didn't know what time he had left the bed. I didn't hear him go. All I knew was the ache he'd left behind. One I wasn't sure I knew how to name. Pulling the sheet tighter around me, I slipped my feet to the floor and stood, moving on shaky legs toward the bathroom. I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror and flinched. My lips were swollen. My skin was mottled with faint bruises on my neck and shoulders, like fingerprints burned into me. Mine. The word echoed in my head, taunting me. I turned on the water and let it run until steam fogged the glass. I stood under the stream until my skin burned, scrubbing at myself like I could wash away the memory of his hands. But I couldn't. I wrapped myself in a towel and stood there, staring at my reflection like a stranger. What have I done? I dressed in the first thing I could find, a soft gray sweater I didn't recognize, and a pair of leggings left neatly on the edge of the dresser. I wondered if he'd told someone to leave them there. I padded quietly down the hallway, unsure where to go, unsure if I was even supposed to move without permission. But my stomach ached with hunger, and my throat felt dry. I followed the faintest scent of coffee. I found the kitchen empty. It was modern. Too perfect. Like no one had ever used it. The kind of kitchen you put in magazines but never cook in. But the coffee pot was half full, steam curling into the air like someone had just been here. I reached for a cup, my hands trembling slightly as I poured. I turned, expecting silence. But he was there, standing in the doorway, watching me. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. He didn't move. He didn't speak. His hair was damp, like he'd just come in from outside. His shirt sleeves were rolled up to his elbows, revealing forearms I hadn't dared to notice before. We stood like that for what felt like hours. Finally, I swallowed hard and whispered, "Do you want some?" His jaw flexed, and for a moment, I thought he might ignore me again. But then, so softly it barely registered, he nodded. I turned back to the counter, heart hammering in my chest, and poured a second cup. My hand shook as I slid it across the island toward him. He walked slowly, like he was afraid to scare me off, like I was something fragile that might break if he moved too fast. He took the cup, fingers brushing mine for the briefest second. I didn't pull away. I should have. But I didn't. He leaned against the counter, cradling the cup between his palms, staring down into the dark liquid like it held answers he didn't know how to ask. Neither of us spoke, until he finally broke the silence. "Do you hate me yet?" he rasped, his voice barely a whisper. The words hit me like a slap. I swallowed the lump in my throat, clutching my own cup tighter. "I don't know," I whispered back. "Should I?" His eyes darkened, something flickering across his face. Regret? Anger? Pain? I couldn't tell. He set the cup down with a soft thud, running a hand through his hair. "I never meant to hurt you," he muttered, voice cracking on the last word. I stared at him, searching his face for a lie. But all I saw was a man unraveling in front of me. I placed my cup down beside his, stepping around the island until I stood just a breath away. "Then why did you?" I asked, voice trembling. His shoulders sagged like he was carrying a weight, too heavy to bear. "Because I didn't know how to stop," he whispered, looking up at me with eyes that didn't belong to the cold stranger I had met in that casino. They belonged to someone else. Someone who looked lost. I reached up, my fingers brushing the side of his face, testing the space between us. He didn't flinch. He leaned into my touch like it was the first real thing he'd felt in years. I didn't know what we were. I didn't know if this was the beginning of something real or just another illusion, but in that moment, I didn't care. Because for the first time, he wasn't running, and neither was I. Days blurred after that morning. We didn't go back to who we were before that night, but we didn't really move forward either. We existed in some strange, fragile space in between. Aiden stopped avoiding me, but he didn't come closer, not fully. Not yet. He started small, quiet, almost like he was testing himself. A cup of coffee left for me on the counter each morning. A chair pulled out for me at dinner. A blanket draped over my shoulders when I fell asleep on the couch one night without realizing he was watching. He still didn't touch me. Not the way he had that night. But there were moments, small, breathless moments, when I caught him looking at me like he was about to break. Like he was afraid if he got too close, he'd ruin me all over again, and maybe I wanted him to try. It was nearly midnight when I found him standing alone in the library. He didn't hear me at first. I stood in the doorway, watching him with his back turned, one hand braced on the edge of the massive desk, his head bowed like the weight of something invisible was pressing down on him. I should have walked away. I should have let him be. But I couldn't. I stepped inside, closing the door softly behind me. His head snapped up at the sound, his body tensing. He looked like he was about to send me away. But then, his shoulders slumped, like he was too tired to fight whatever this was anymore. "Can't sleep?" I whispered. He shook his head without looking at me. I crossed the room slowly, heart pounding louder with every step. I stopped a few feet away, unsure if I was brave enough to close the rest of the distance. But he turned. And that look in his eyes, it pulled me in. Before I could second-guess myself, I reached for him, curling my fingers into the fabric of his shirt. I pressed my forehead to his chest, holding my breath. He stood frozen for a heartbeat. 2. Then his arms wrapped around me, pulling me tight against him like something inside him had snapped. I felt his breath shudder against my hair, felt the tremble in his hands as they slid up my back, holding me like I might disappear if he let go. "I don't know how to do this," he rasped, his voice breaking against my skin. I tilted my face up, my heart aching at the pain carved into his features. "Then don't think," I whispered. "Just be here, with me." His jaw clenched, eyes searching mine like he didn't believe he deserved to. And maybe he didn't. But I didn't care. I reached up, cupping his face. "With both hands, Aiden!" I breathed. That was all it took. His mouth crashed down on mine. But this time it wasn't rough. It wasn't angry or desperate or punishing. It was soft, slow, like he was learning me for the first time. His hands framed my face, his lips moving with mine in a kiss that felt like it was unraveling something tight and tangled between us. I melted into him, my body pressing closer until there was no space left to hide. His breath hitched as he pulled back just enough to look me in the eyes. "I don't deserve you," he whispered. "But God help me. I can't stop wanting you." Tears stung the corners of my eyes. I reached for his hand, lacing our fingers, together, grounding both of us. "You don't have to deserve me," I whispered. "You just have to choose me." He exhaled sharply, like I'd just knocked the air out of his lungs. And for the first time, I saw it. Not the cold, ruthless man from that night. Not the stranger who had bought my freedom. I saw the boy who had once stood in my mother's kitchen, looking for something to hold on to. He leaned in, pressing his forehead to mine, his voice cracking. "I choose you," he rasped. "I've always chosen you." I wrapped my arms around him, burying my face in his chest, holding on tight. Because, for the first time, I believed him. I woke up the next morning thinking it had all been a dream. But when I rolled over and felt the steady weight of his arm across my waist, when I heard the slow, even rhythm of his breathing beside me, I knew it wasn't. Aiden was still here, his forehead pressed to the back of my shoulder, his fingers curled possessively around my hip, like he'd been holding me all night. And somehow, after everything we'd done, I felt safe. I didn't know how long I lay there, not daring to move. I didn't want to break whatever fragile peace had settled between us. But reality has a cruel way of creeping back in. It started with a phone call. I heard it later that day. His voice, low and cold again, in the next room. I hadn't meant to listen, but the words reached me anyway. "She won't last the year," he said, his voice like ice. "The contract will expire, and I'll walk away clean." My heart stopped. I pressed my back to the wall outside his office, my throat closing around the breath I couldn't catch. Clean, like I was nothing more than a transaction. I felt the ground shift beneath me, like I'd been standing on a cracked floor all along. I should have known. Should have never let myself believe anything had changed. Tears blurred my vision as I turned, stumbling back to our bedroom. I grabbed my bag, my coat. I couldn't breathe. I left the ring on the nightstand. I didn't leave a note. I didn't need to. I didn't know where I was going until I got there. The small storefront I used to dream of turning into my own seamstress shop sat at the edge of Charleston's historic district, just a few blocks from the home I'd grown up in. It had been boarded up for months, abandoned like every other dream I'd let go of. But I had nowhere else to go. I sat on the curb outside the locked door, knees pulled to my chest, trying to hold myself together. My breath fogged in the cold morning air, my fingers numb. I should have known better. I should have never let myself hope. The soft crunch of footsteps on gravel made me flinch. I didn't turn. Not until I heard his voice. "I've been looking. For you," Aiden rasped, breathless. I clenched my jaw, curling tighter around myself. "Go away." He didn't move. I could feel him standing behind me, the weight of his silence pressing down on my shoulders. I finally turned, ready to tell him to leave for good. But when I did, I froze. He was on his knees, right there on the broken sidewalk, in front of the storefront I had once dreamed of claiming as my own. His hair was disheveled. His suit jacket was gone. His hands trembled as he pulled something from his pocket. It wasn't the ring he'd given me that night in Manhattan. It was smaller, older, silver. I blinked, my throat tightening. "Mama's ring," I choked out. He nodded slowly, his voice breaking. "I kept it," he whispered. "All these years, I kept it. Not for her, not for revenge. For you." I shook my head, tears spilling over. "You lied to me," I choked. "I heard you talking about the contract." His jaw tensed, but when he looked up at me, there was no ice left in his eyes, only pain. "I was wrong," he rasped. "I was trying to protect myself. Pretend you didn't matter. But you do, Lena. You do." I wrapped my arms around my chest, shaking my head, trying to block out the ache clawing its way through me. "I'm not a debt," I whispered. "No," he breathed, crawling closer on his knees, cupping my face with trembling hands. "You're not, you never were." I couldn't breathe. "You're the only thing I want," he whispered. "Not as payment, not as punishment, as mine." I swallowed hard, my heart cracking open all over again. "Why now?" I whispered. "Why after everything?" His thumbs brushed away my tears as he leaned his forehead against mine, breathing me in like I was the only thing holding him upright. "Because I can't live without you," he whispered. "I don't want to." I broke. I sank to my knees in front of him, clutching his face between my hands, pressing my lips to his with every ounce of hope I had left. He pulled me into his arms, wrapping me so tightly I could barely breathe, and I didn't want to. Not if it meant losing this. We didn't go back to New York right away. We stayed in Charleston for a while, long enough to walk through every room of the old house together, long enough for him to sit at my mother's bedside and thank her for saving him once, long before I ever knew what that meant. We started over in that little storefront, turning broken dreams into something real. And every night, when he held me close, when he whispered in my ear, "You're mine, forever," I finally believed him. If this story touched you in any way, don't forget to hit that like button to let us know you're here. And if you want more powerful stories about love, loss, and second chances, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss the next chapter. Thank you for being part of this journey with us.